Local Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yamin of Revolution. What is our culture? I got some FBA news y'all can use. But before we get into that, y'all be sure to wipe y'all feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, let's get right into the content this morning. Salute, soldiers. Salute.
I'm disgusted and I'm annoyed. I'm absolutely sick of the culture today. I happen to have a platform with a decent-sized following, so I'm going to be responsible and say what needs to be said. Let me start here. There is a major problem in the so-called Black community, and as long as people are silent about it, it will only continue to get worse. We have been so manipulated and played for such a very long time. Wickedness and immorality has been marketed to us so that it's now believed that this immorality is considered Black culture. And for the most part, people just assume that you're a part of it or that you tolerate it. For instance, if I take a cab or an Uber somewhere, the driver automatically believes that I want to listen to some ratchet music or that I accept this wickedness. They just automatically assume it. And it has nothing to do with me, but just about what people believe Black culture really is. Now, let me say that I don't agree with this label of being Black. I've done a whole series on the fact that we are not Black people. But in this world today, this is how we are labeled. There was a show that my wife would occasionally watch on YouTube, and it would show different cultures cooking against each other. They would show Italians versus Black, Filipino versus Black, Latino versus Black, Chinese versus Black. Everyone else identified by a nation or a culture. We are the only people in the world that are only identified by a skin color. That's not even our color because most of us are brown skinned. But we are the only ones identified like this, and no one really stops and questions why. I mean, to be fair, they do say white versus Black at times, but even the people labeled as white, they have an idea of their heritage before their family came to America. But anyways, my point is, what bothers me is what we know as Black culture today, and I'm completely over it. I am not just tired of the wickedness that's promoted and accepted, but more so, I'm tired of the acceptance of the modern day versions of Uncle Toms and these pure sellouts who have become our role models and our influences and who we all look to and desire to understand what they're thinking. I'm tired of them all, and I believe it needs to be said and called out. Let me say that this annoyance has been around since I woke up to what the enemy has been hiding in this world, and that's all about our heritage and why they identify us only as Black. I've already been intolerant to much of our culture today, and I've separated my family from it. But I think it was last year where my intolerance, it just hit a boiling point. This was at that time when this whole Diddy thing came out and when that guy Curtis made a Netflix special on him. Now, let's be clear that I am bothered by those things that were shown in those documentaries. I left hip-hop culture maybe over a decade and a half ago after I discovered the dirty, nasty secret of the industry.
And then they started wearing girl pants, and then they're wearing jeggings, and then, yes, it's very effeminized, but be very clear. There were lots of homosexuals in hip hop back in the 80s too. That was what's worse, hip hop wearing skirts or hip hop being closeted and having a plethora of kids to prove manhood that, and denial of something that you shouldn't have to deny, which is your sexuality, come from a very homosexual era of hip hop as well. There was a radio personality once upon a time. Her name was Wendy Williams, and she was practically burned at the stake for talking about such. And now it's all come full circle. There were many situations, none of which to talk about, but there were many situations back in the day in my career. And it's all coming full circle now. So
I can never respect these men. And that goes for all of them, every last one of them. But let me just slow down. Yes, I was bothered by what was shown in the Diddy documentaries that turned to be a plague to our community. I'm bothered by that virus that was spread. But that's not really what triggered my real annoyance. What I'm really annoyed by is the silence. I'm annoyed by the men. And let me be clear that Feminism, particularly in this so-called Black community, is another thing I have absolutely no tolerance for. But when being real, if the problem with our men wasn't so severe, feminism wouldn't even be able to exist. The enemy won the battle against our men early and then kept the fight going and changed the weapon and started using our women against us. That's an old agenda, and we're still living through it now. But I know that there will be no way of any type of change while we have the type of examples of male leadership that we have today. Understand it like this. This is the point of view that I'm speaking from. Right now, our enemy is winning tremendously because our men are no longer choosing to be men. What we used to be that made the enemy fear us no longer exists in the majority. And this is why, in the eyes of the enemy, he is able to change his strategy of oppression. To our enemy, we no longer need oppression, but we need acceptance because we are led by world-class Uncle Toms that have sold us out for their own betterment. And because of these sellouts, the men that the enemy needed to take down in order for him to keep power over us, in the grand scheme of things, the men have been neutralized. And our men are the same as every other follower in this world, weak and easily controlled. And last week, that BET award show is a classic example of it. Now, I couldn't watch most of that show. I just saw a lot of clips, and the clips were just annoying by itself. I couldn't imagine watching that whole thing. The Black Entertainment Award Show is the primary showcase of what Black culture in America is. And all the most famous Black celebrities go to LA to showcase it. And where there should be outrage and condemnation, there is applause and celebration. If people were really awake, we would look at everyone at these shows as weak, they're sellouts, and they're poisonous. Every negative word that we could use should be used. This is not Black entertainment. It is what those who have paid for the enslavement of our ancestors, those who made sure that there were no opportunities in our community, those who made sure that drugs and guns were available in our communities, those who built the projects and made sure that we lived in slums, the same ones who invested in our oppression. These are the same ones who are funding and determining what Black culture is. When we say Black entertainment, the company that determines what we can show as Black culture, they are not even part of the community. The ones who have the final say about our culture are not in our community. And they pick the easiest controlled coons to represent us and display what they want to say Black culture is. BET Media Group is owned by Paramount Skydance Media, controlled by David Ellison and the Ellison family. David Ellison, son of Oracle founder Larry Ellison, has the final say on what Black entertainment is. And listen, I say that to say there's nothing you can do about the power of corporations. But there is something that you can do about the coons and the sellouts that bow to these men in order that they could be celebrities and to be famous. I mean, they chose that guy Drewski to host the show, and he is literally there to humiliate and make fun of our dysfunction. Pay attention to who people are allowed to criticize and mock and make fun of, but who they are not allowed to speak against. I mean, they can make as many skits and degrade so-called Black people as much as they want. Get us to laugh about our own dysfunction and our destruction. But is he allowed to mock anything about Jewish culture? Absolutely not. If he did those same things like he does with the Black stereotypes, and he did that with the Jewish stereotypes, there would be major backlash. There would be controversy and outrage, claims of anti-Semitism, backlash. People will be canceled. There will be no tolerance for it. There's only tolerance for destroying your own people. And so these coons do what they are allowed to do and make fun of who they are allowed to degrade, but they protect massa at all costs. And I can speak all day about how we got here and why, but the overall problem is because of weak men that are sellouts and don't care about our people, they only care about themselves and their families. This is how we got here. And the time that we're in, this generation of men that we have from the baby boomer generation on down, the majority of men are too weak to stand up and say something. And everywhere I turn, there's a weak, sellout man speaking and talking, being a tool for the people that truly hate us. We need a narrative change. We need to start having real conversations, and we need to stop tolerating coons. Now, let me be clear. It's obviously not all men that I'm speaking about. Some of you are not the problem, and some of you who may think you're not the problem actually are. But that won't make sense until I break it all down. At this time, though, my problem is not really the majority of men, but my main problem is the men with the loudest voices on all these platforms. It's the men in the mainstream with the loudest voices, and it doesn't matter what industry, whether they come from sports, music, acting, religion, politics, social media influence. It doesn't matter where they come from. If they're popular and they're mainstream, They are a problem. And I'm going to explain my reasoning, so please hold your disagreement until I fully explain myself. What I'm saying is that all these men have failed us and sold us out in some way or form. Some worse than others, obviously, but it doesn't matter if you sold a fiend a little crack or a lot of it. It doesn't matter because you still ruined the person's life for your own gain. And I'm tired of the praising of dope boys.
Me and my niggas getting money. With the dope boys. Yeah.
I did that enough when I was young and stupid, and I see what that brings. What I want to communicate is that it's time that the narrative changes. And for me, as a man with a voice, a man with sons, a man that truly cares about his people, I cannot be quiet just because it's easier to do. I'm going to say what's unpopular because it's what needs to be said. And the way I do things, I'm going to break it down methodically. So I'm calling for a narrative change in the so-called Black community. Stop praising, supporting, and following Uncle Toms. It's time that our men stand up and become men. This message is especially directed for the young men that are growing up right now. You can be directed to either follow the Uncle Toms and be led to slaughter, or you can grow up with knowledge and understanding and be the type of man your enemy hates. And I'm going to talk all about it. I'm going to talk about what these coons refuse to talk about. I'm going to put these words out there in hopes that it reaches the right minds and wakes them up before time truly changes and it's too late. It's time to change the narrative, and that change starts with you. We're going to talk about it. Let's begin. Okay, so let me start here. As I said, the narrative needs to change. Let's be clear and set some expectations, though. This change is not going to be in the mainstream. This narrative change is not going to be popular, and it will come with adversity because of money and agendas. This is not something that's going to go viral. I remember there was a time when they kept saying that Black families and Black fathers didn't exist, and Black men would start standing up and showing that there were fathers in the home. Now, the truth of that never went viral. That wasn't a change that was noticed in the mainstream. But for the people that was meant to see it, it was seen. And it influenced other men to be seen in their homes and to be good fathers. The influence didn't need to be mainstream in order for it to have impact. Please understand that there is easily seen billions, if not trillions of dollars that is directly invested in the demise and fall of our community. Again, just look at the BET award show. Do you think that these people will be investing their money to market us values that strengthen our communities? They market us everything that ensures that our communities will be weak. And here's the thing. You can say that it's the same for all the other cultures, but it's not. They don't have a white entertainment network, but they do have award shows for them. And they are nothing like this show. And in fact, the Black community, they feel that they've made it if they make it onto those shows. That's the definition of real success in their minds. My point is that the people from the other cultures, they see that there are different options that they can be like. They have options. We are not sold options. We are sold that if you want to make it out, you have to be like this. This is what our culture is, point blank. And if you do not want to be like them, you have to be like the other cultures. This is what we're sold, and this is what everyone else around the world believes. This is intentional. You have to understand that there's a bigger agenda in this world that is above all of this. There is a major world conspiracy, regardless if you want to recognize it or not. And in order for this world conspiracy to happen, the mainstream narrative that is made to make us ratchet and to have no morals, this narrative must thrive. It has to. And so I say all that to say that going against the mainstream narrative, again, it's not going to be popular. This will not be a viral moment. There is absolutely no way that this message will be mainstream. So understand, it's not for the mainstream. It's for the men and women in our community that still have some sense of morals and values left, even if that morality is still hanging on by a thread. It's time that the narrative changes. It's time that there are men and women out here that are intolerant of the way things are, and they will no longer just stand by and walk in silence. So let me explain. I'm right now in my mid-40s, so we'll set the marker from my age. Now, we can go back at least 2 to 3 decades back in the 90s. This is truly the time when they took the handcuffs off and they started merging Satanism into hip-hop culture. But the problem didn't start there. So to be more specific, we should go back from the times of the man they call Martin Luther King, but I'm keeping it light. If you study all the mind control that happened during that era, you can see that this is really the time of change of morality in this world. The problem is that for over 6 to 7 decades, over 70 years, the so-called Black community has been celebrating and praising coons and Uncle Toms, house Negroes that have sold you out for fake dollar bills. You have been sold out to your enemy. You have been gift wrapped and sealed with a bow. You have been conquered by your enemy. And the worst part to this realization is how it happened. It happened through wolves the enemy sent to you. Wolves that you all follow, idolize, and praise. Wolves that have taken your power, kept you distracted, uprooted your culture, and they did this for their own fame and their own fortune. And the worst part is their fame and their fortune hangs on a thread and can be taken away from them at any time if they're not fully complicit. Or even if they are fully obedient, the success always has a timestamp because the truth is that the enemy hates them. So they know they have a timestamp. It's like what Roseanne Barr said.
It really upset me, so I summoned Satan, and I write about how I made it.
Where do you summon Satan?
It's in the chapter called Eat, Pray, Love, Conjure Satan. I wanted to get famous no matter what, and then I forgot that I had this deal with Satan and everything, and then I got really famous, and then one day I had this tragic singing accident at
yes, I remember that, yeah.
And I realized then that Satan was coming for my soul. So, yeah, he wanted me to pay up. So
they've made an agreement that they allow themselves to be used for a period of time, and they get to be rich and famous, and they get to come out of the oppression that we have been under. They get access to the true American system that was built and was designed to keep the Negro slaves out.
I'm first billionaire in hip hop.
If they do what Massa tells them, they get access. So these sellouts, they do as Massa tells them in order for them to be rich and famous and praised by you. And here's the thing. Do you know what it is that they have to do? What does Massa want from them? In order for them to obtain power, they must make sure that you are powerless. Let me say it again. In order for these celebrities and mainstream influencers to obtain power, they must ensure that you are powerless. Now, let's be clear that some are, of course, worse than others, obviously. But in the end, this does not matter. They are all bad and guilty. And why is that? It's because in order for them to have anything, they have to sell us out, keep us distracted, and make sure that we are constantly consuming kryptonite. But if you want to know who's worse, it's not just based upon bank accounts, but really about influence. Who does this system want you to listen to the most? Who has the loudest voice, the most influence? Who are the ones that seem that they're on top? These are the ones that have done the most cooning. Let me just back up just a little bit, though. When I was a teenager growing up in New York, we had these words, coon and Uncle Tom. I assume they said the same thing in the South, but I don't know. I don't know if there are equivalents today in modern culture. I don't really know. But these words are based upon a different time period. For instance, a coon was looked at as a slur used against so-called black people, stemming from the minstrel shows and coon songs that depicted harmful and dehumanizing stereotypes. Back in the time, not too long ago, mind you, white people, they used to dress in blackface and make fun of us, calling us fools and lazy and a bunch of other stereotypes. And when this term coon was used about someone, this is basically saying, instead of a white man putting on blackface, they basically are paying someone to depict the stereotype themselves, basically selling us out for some dollars so the enemy can laugh and take advantage of us. There was this movie from Spike Lee called Bamboozled that depicted this very accurately. Now, the other term is Uncle Tom. Being an Uncle Tom is similar. It is a term for a black person, usually a man, perceived as excessively subservient, submissive, or one who goes out of their way to accommodate white people in order to gain favor. And Uncle Tom implies a betrayal of one's own race by acting as a sellout or being complicit with white oppression. And yes, we know the actual term Uncle Tom is reversed because who the true Uncle Tom actually was the complete opposite. But it still doesn't change how the word is used today. The point is that we use these terms for people that we call sellouts. Now, me, as a teen, I, of course, knew very little about this world at the time. So sellouts, coons, or Uncle Toms were people like this to me. Bryant Gumbel, Tiger Woods, Clarence Thomas, these type of men. These were always easy examples that we would look at as someone who sold us out. But that's when I was young and I knew nothing about this world. That is not today. And so, as I said, the narrative needs to change. Because when I was young and I held this idea, I didn't know I was actually being influenced by the biggest Uncle Toms and the biggest coons in the world. When you change the narrative and you recognize the true world we live in, you recognize the overwhelming amount of examples we have of Uncle Toms. In my opinion, the biggest Uncle Toms are right on our face and we still praise them. The men I'm talking about are men like Diddy or 50 Cent, Jay-Z, LeBron James, Kevin Hart, Michael B. Jordan, Will Smith, T.D. Jakes, Jamal Bryant, Drewski, anybody that went up on that stage at the BET Award show. I mean, the list doesn't stop. In my opinion, it's easily said that there are not a lot of people that you would know in the mainstream that would not be on that list. It's because the only reason they have been able to become famous is because they have allegedly submitted and bowed to the enemy.
I sold my soul to the devil. I know it's a crappy deal. Lisa came with a few toys like a Happy Meal.
You only know them because they allegedly have pledged their allegiance to those who hate you and desire to see you down. And they are there to keep you down. Listen on their podcast when they say, oh, I don't want to say too much. Why? Why don't they want to say too much? So look, if this was really understood, then when we would watch these people, when you listen to their podcast, when you follow them, you would understand that these people are just tools for the enemy. The truth is that this world is being moved in a very intentional direction. There are many different moving parts to it. There's economic, there's political, there's religious aspects. There are a great deal of moving parts to it. But the one thing that the people that are referred to as black people, the one thing that they don't recognize is that they play one of the biggest roles in the agenda. There is an actual agenda that has been waged against you. If you don't wake up from it and recognize the game in a very short period of time, you are going to go down with the same people you have been fighting against. You've only been trained to see things as white versus black, and that's because that's Masonic. It's dualism. The biggest form of this concept of duality is the symbolism of white versus black. It's used in the creation of a major form of division and opposing forces, and that's racism. This is how we've been intentionally trained to see the world through. The classification of white people versus black people. I'm not black. I'm amber skin. I'm a beautiful shade of amber, actually, but I'm classified as black. That's because of this duality that has been presented by satanic men who subscribe to this occult doctrine. They made opposing forces between races, and it was very specific. We know we aren't black, and they aren't white. This is a classification system that they created that we have been programmed to accept. It's called indoctrination. And here's the thing. If the indoctrination means nothing, and there's no agenda behind it, then it should be ignored and doesn't mean anything. But if we were indoctrinated for a specific purpose, that is what we must be concerned with. You must understand that in the symbolism of duality, there's a belief that in order for their Masonic goals to come forth, you must have this struggle between white versus black. And that's why you're trained to believe the conflict is white people versus black people. We eat that agenda up while all sides are being used by the real culprits who have a spiritual hatred for you, not because of your skin color, but because of who you are. And as long as they beat you down and keep you eating kryptonite, you will always be without power, and you will fall with the same people you have been fighting against because they are nothing but pawns. You've only been trained to think that they actually have power when they actually do not. There is only one truth in this world that matters, that will liberate you and free you. And you have been systematically oppressed so that you only know what kryptonite tastes like. You only know what keeps you in bondage, what keeps you powerless, what keeps you from true happiness and peace. We are almost at a time where this whole thing is about to implode. I mean, just look around you. How long do you think this culture can continue to go on? As a majority, we have absolutely no morality or values left. You have men like Chris Brown literally doing soft porn on the stage of his concerts, and everyone's okay with it. You have this girl, Young Miami or whatever her name is, who made a song about scamming, and these idiots are dancing to it like it's an anthem. And here's the worst part. This girl says that God is blessing her.
I literally have tears in my eyes because I am so blessed. God, I don't want to cry, but God just never took his hands off of me. I am overwhelmed with joy.
And Chris Brown and Usher literally prayed to Jesus before their show of debauchery.
Some of this vibe
All right, Father, you know what to do. Bless us, anoint every gift in this room, and we will give your name the credit. In Jesus' name we say, amen.
Do you understand that the God that they're praying to is not the God of the Bible? Do you understand that even if you left out the conspiracy of where this world is going, when this is the culture, it is a recipe for a broken community no matter what. Imagine the children that will grow up from this generation of wickedness. Imagine the children that they will create. They made a movie called Idiocracy, if you ever want an example of what it looks like in the future. There is no reality that if this all continues, there being a strong future continuing in this status quo. Hard decisions need to be made. Hard realities need to be dealt with. Hard conversations need to be had. We are at a time where evil is called good, and what was once called dark is now called light. The Bible says, woe to that. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Woe to them. You do not want to be attached to it. There is a problem that is directly in everyone's face, and it needs to be dealt with. The narrative needs to change, and perhaps people don't recognize why because it hasn't been fully broken down, so that's what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is explain the narrative and who's behind it and why. I'm going to next explain the plan, and I hope and pray that some of you snap out of it and remove yourself from all the tools the enemy is warring against you with. It's time that the narrative changes, and this will not happen in the mainstream. As it said, the revolution will not be televised. Please know the mainstream is invested in your demise. You have to make the change yourself. You have to stop feeding on kryptonite and learn what it is the enemy is keeping you away from. And so I'm going to talk about it in hopes that it sparks conversations with many of you and change can begin before it's too late. This video, I'm just introducing the problem. I'm going to take my time and break it all down in the next videos. These things need to be said, and so it's going to be said. So please. In the first part of this series, I introduced the subject on why there needs to be a narrative change. It's very hard to make videos like this because the problem is so large and extensive, and there's so many different areas to highlight. It's literally impossible to touch all aspects of the agenda in a video format like this. There's just too much to share. The point is not about pointing fingers, but it's about shifting your mental attitude so that you know how to recognize your enemy. Your enemy doesn't always come to you with hate and attacking you. Sometimes your worst enemy can be those who embrace you and make you feel like they care for you. You invite the enemy in and trust them while they're completely against you. Look how evil this world is. Look at the morals and the values in our society. Is it that hard to imagine that people who are paid millions to influence you are being paid these millions to sell you drugs? Just a different type of drug. For instance, the main influence of rap back in the 90s were rappers who sold crack. They sold drugs in their community in order for them to ride in nice cars and wear good clothes. They created fiends that literally destroyed the community. But in rap culture, that wasn't the narrative that we were taught to care about. We cared about the fact that they were getting money and how they avoid being caught by the cops. I mean, even right now, grown men, T.I. and T-Pain, coming out with a track, Dope Boy Academy.
Me and my niggas getting money. With the dope boys. Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. These are grown men. This is the lifestyle that they're praising.
Scale being a
yeah, like how do you just move faster? You move more faster.
Yeah.
So if you get bigger, the pieces got bigger. I was giving away more drugs for the money, but the clientele was drawing it off the other corners. So it was like they were pulling everybody to that corner because it was so much more. They were getting more for their money. Yeah. And then it's like,
so you're giving better deals.
And everybody's expanding.
Expanding.
You got to open your franchises.
Yeah, you're like Amazon for crack.
Now, with that said, if you take that same mindset that they have, what happens if you take those same individuals and now you offer them 100 times more money without the consequences of risking their freedom if they just sold a different type of drug? The people wouldn't even know that they were fiends. I remember in his tracks, Jay-Z thanked us for being his customer.
Thanks to all the hustlers, and most importantly, you, your customer.
My point is that why is it so hard to believe that you are not intentionally sold out by Coons and Uncle Toms? I mean, look at your entertainment. Let's use the two of the biggest names right now, Tyler Perry and 50 Cent, because they're into film. I mean, back in my day, I rocked with 50 hard before he even went to M and Dre. Before he became mainstream, New Yorkers We knew of 50 with his mixtapes and whatnot. But whatever, his content is highly immoral. It took a great deal of reprogramming myself from all of that. My point is, please review right now the content that he has produced. I'm not talking about his music, I'm talking about his film. Is he being paid to uplift our children and promote values that will create strong communities? Or is he making content that promotes us in one particular way? That we can be gangsters or drug dealers or pimps? Or Tyler Perry? His content is completely about promoting weak black men and their consistent drama and chaos and immorality. And I get it. This is what sells, right? Sex, money, and drugs. But this is just an excuse. These people are Uncle Toms and they're coons, and they should not have our respect. It's very deep. And in order to realize it, this whole conversation needs to be had and the agenda needs to be explained. I've said there needs to be a narrative change many times, but I want to make it clear what that means. The narrative needs to change from us praising and idolizing and supporting the very people who are being used to bring us down. It's like cheering on the people who are bringing you in shackles to the slave master. You don't recognize it because it's mental slavery. This is why our morals and our values are completely different than our grandparents' generation. You have to understand there was a social shift that happened, and you have to understand how and why it happened. We need to recognize the sellouts for what they are, and they need to start being ashamed of their decision instead of feeling praised and recognized. The narrative needs to change that we see them selling out, and we don't respect them. If we change, they will be forced to as well. Most people don't recognize the selling out because they don't understand the system. And so this is what needs to be discussed. So I'm going to explain the agenda in hopes that after you understand the enemy and the war that he has been waging, you can then begin to look at some of these tools that he has been using and understand why they should not be praised, but avoided and called out. There needs to be a narrative change, and it starts with you. I'm going to show you why. Let's begin. Okay, so before I go in more depth, I need to talk about the enemy because in part one, I mentioned the enemy often. And without me being clear, you may not truly understand what it is I'm saying. Just saying enemy makes little sense, and we can think that we're talking about the same things when we're absolutely not. So let's be clear. When I say the enemy, I'm not talking about the white man. This isn't some racially charged movement caught up in Masonic arguments of division. The enemy I'm speaking about is Satan. And let me also be clear that this is not here in promotion of Christianity. I'm not here to make you a Christian. Christians are a major part of the problem as well. The falsehoods in Christianity is what led many of us into the arms of hip hop. Now, be clear, that does not mean that I do not believe in the Bible because that is absolutely not the truth. I completely believe in the Bible 100%. I'm just not tied to organized religion. So I'm not trying to get you to be a Christian or a Hebrew Israelite in these camps. None of that nonsense. I am free. And what that means is that I don't need a group or label to identify myself through. So what normally happens is that you're going to want to try to tie me to some group or some influence. You're going to want to place a label on me. But you will find that I don't fit in the box that you're trying to place me in. So please, instead of trying to sum me up by your labels, just hear me out. The truth is masked and covered up by an extreme amount of lies. So all I'm asking is please don't assume. So let me explain it again. When I'm speaking of the enemy, I'm speaking about Satan. It's not a secret that people sell their souls to the devil. Maybe you want to say, well, you don't believe in all that. Well, I'm sorry to say that's just because you are tied to the devil more than you may want to admit. If anyone wants to say that the devil doesn't exist, when these people literally make a great deal of references to the devil, you are completely naive. The amount of imagery that many of these sellouts promote to us and show us, for anyone to say that the devil isn't real, is either one whose eyes are completely closed to this world, or they are secretly an enemy purposely trying to distract and deter. If you think that when Kanye West says that he sold his soul to the devil,
I sold my soul to the devil. I know it's a crappy deal. Lisa came with a few toys like a Happy Meal.
And he makes a video about him being in the gates of hell with Masonic symbolism throughout, or when he helps Jay-Z produce a track called Lucifer, Diddy having a tattoo of a completely evil demon on his back. I mean, with the amount of satanic imagery that these people promote, for anyone to say that the devil isn't real, they are highly taken advantage of by Satan. Anyways, like I said, Satan is the enemy, and his goal is to be like the Most High Yahuwah. Yahuwah is the creator of all things. He has a name. Christians don't know his name, which is why if your main influence about the Bible is from Christians, you more than likely will have no knowledge of our Father Yahuwah. Anyways, Satan is a rebellious demon who promoted rebellion in heaven against the Most High because of pride. This demonic leader has many different names, and he has presented himself to the world through many different names at different periods of times. Like what was said in the X-Men movie about the mutant who said he was God.
Who are you? Elohim, Shen, Ra. I've been called many names over many lifetimes.
Anyways, his name's not important because he switches it up to the world. Being that so many worshippers of him refer to Lucifer, we'll just refer to him in this way. Lucifer's goal is to be like the Most High, and he desires the world worship him in the same way that the world will worship Yahuwah. So, since creation, he has promoted rebellion to get the people of this world to worship him. It is declared in Isaiah chapter 14, how you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Elohim. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will be like the Most High. Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 through 14. And this right here is the conflict of the scriptures. And you must understand that he has a goal of directing this world to worship him knowingly. And in order for this to happen, he has used specific people from ancient bloodlines who are tied directly to him, and he has given them great power in this world. It's not new power, but just new players that pop in throughout history as his plot thickens. Secret societies emerge from the older ones, like the Knights Templar, after being claimed to be dissolved, goes into hiding and later emerges stronger with Freemasonry. The mystery religions move from being in secret to being right and open in the Roman Catholic Church. Money and power move from the hands of the Romans, like the Medicis, and from the Germans, they get transferred into the hands of the Rothschilds. I mean, there's a lot to it. The point I am making is that Satan has given power to a small few, and their job is to be loyal to him, to promote his agenda. I mean, we see Satan give this promise in the Bible when Yahushua the Messiah is tempted in the wilderness. What does Satan promise him? It says, again, the devil took him up on an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. Then Yahushua said to him, away with you, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship Yahuwah your Elohim, and him only you shall serve. Matthew chapter 4, verse 8 through 10. Yahushua rejected it. But through history, we do see that Satan did have takers who bowed to him, and he gave them the kingdoms of this world. And so today, this world is run by the hands of a small few who run the world through banking and religion. And the thing is that if you even mention what it is that they claim to be, you get censored and called anti-S. I refer to them as Rev 2:9, short for Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. You can read that verse on your own if you don't know it. It's the Rev 2:9s that have a great deal of power in this world, and they are the unseen hand. They are God's chosen people, but Yahuwah is not their God. Lucifer is. This is the God that this world bows to. When they say one nation under God, it is not Yahuwah, our creator, that they're speaking about. The narrative in this world is that they portray themselves as they are the biblical people and that their goal and purpose is all about the Bible, but that is only easily believed by people who don't actually read the Bible for themselves. They claim to be God's chosen people, but they don't even have the power and authority to say our Father's name. When they speak of their God, they say Hashem, and they say the name of the Messiah is Yeshua, which is not true. People literally follow the influence from a people that they know completely reject the Messiah of Yasharel. That's Israel. Anyways, where am I going with this? The point is that they are carefully directing this world towards the worship of Satan, and Satan is literally a copycat of the Most High Yahuwah. He doesn't want new goals. He wants to be like the Most High. So just as Yahuwah sent his son to be king, Satan has his own satanic version of this goal, and through politics, economics, and religion, he has been directing this world towards the worship of him and his son. This is literally what everything in this world, and I mean everything in this world, is all about. And so here's the biggest reveal. The Rev 2:9s, they claim that the Bible is written about them. But this is an extreme lie. And the easy way to know this is just knowing the basics of the Bible. There are 12 tribes of Israel. Judah, which is where the word Jew comes from, represents one of the 12. Every Jew is an Israelite, but every Israelite is not a Jew. And everything prophesied that happened about the biblical Israelites is about 12 tribes who are punished and scattered. They would not have great wealth, and they would not be protected by the world. They will be hated and cursed. This will be because they were disobedient and our Father punished them. Understand, Satan hates Yahuwah and hates everything that Yahuwah loves. So do you honestly think that Satan will be protecting the Creator's chosen people? Would Satan allow there to be no tolerance for rejection of them? Would he literally make sure that people cannot even speak against them? It would actually be the opposite, wouldn't it? Okay, so where am I going with this? Well, the truth about this world is very much in reverse. Those who are actually really hated and have been oppressed and knowledge of who they are is completely wiped out, only to refer to themselves as a skin color, it is them that the Bible is actually written about. The Bible is actually their history book, and they were cursed and punished for the sins of their ancestors, which is very much written and documented. The people we label as Black people are actually the biblical Israelites, and everything that happened to us is documented in the Bible, which is why we are not taught to read it. Just like losing our heritage. It says, "And you, even yourself, shall let go of your heritage which I gave you, and I will cause you to serve your enemies in the land which you do not know, for you have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever." Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 4. And this serving our enemies in a land that we do not know, this is prophesied many times. And so here's the plot twist. Because of our disobedience, we were punished severely, and we were given into the hand of the enemy who had control of these other nations who enslaved us, and they did us dirty. And while we were being taken as slaves, they were wiping out our memory of our heritage. Remember, we did not speak English before we came here to the States. They would judge us as being stupid for not being able to read their language because this was not our heritage and our culture. We were implanted with this. And while this was going on with us, there was a people who earlier converted to a form of our faith in the 10th century under King Bulan, and through many different connections, they were given power. And they basically assumed our identity and said that they are us. We don't know who we are, while they say they are a version of us. But everything about them is unbiblical. And the truth of this is obvious if you just read the Bible. Their heritage goes through the mother, when the biblical Israelites goes through the father. Their New Year starts at Rosh Hashanah, which is always around September, when the biblical New Year is in the month of Nisan or Abib, which is generally around March or April. Like I said, they claim that they represent Israel when they are one tribe, when there are really 12 tribes. Also, they literally have wealth and power when they should be cursed and oppressed. And with all that said, I know you're saying, what is the point of all this that I just went through all that? Why? The point is about understanding this world. I spoke about two groups, those who we label Black and the Rev 29s who stole our identity. Now here's the thing. If we were actually living in alignment to our Father and his ways, as he promised, there would be nothing that anyone could do to us. But because of our ancestors' disobedience, they were able to do plenty. So the devil, like I said earlier, his goal is to have the whole world worship him. But do you know who has always been the monkey wrench to this? Yeah, us. If you know the history of this world, the other nations of this world have always worshiped Satan in the form that he presented himself to them. Pagan culture has always been wicked. Christianity and Islam and this form of Judaism, they were all created with a goal in mind to lead people to the worship of one God that directly leads to Lucifer. The Israelites were always the issue because even in their disobedience, the majority of them knew that Yahuwah was the Most High, no one greater. So in order for Satan to really realize his goal of being worshipped by the world, he needed to direct the world to him and convert the enslaved Hebrews to attaching themselves to him while making them do it by their own free will. There's a quote from Captain America Winter Soldier that explains this.
What we did not realize was that if you try to take that freedom, they resist. The war taught us much. Humanity needed to surrender its freedom willingly.
Yeah, so you see, humanity needed to surrender its freedom willingly because if you just take it from them, they resist. But if you control their surrender, they will give you their freedom willingly. So this is where the sellouts come into this picture. I went deep around the overall problem. I'm sure you can imagine there's a lot more to this, but that was the overall gist of it. Now, here's the thing. The enemy works in phases. If we use slavery as the beginning of their overall agenda, we can see that they broke this all down into about 8 phases that went through many generations, each phase carefully executed in order to bring us to where we are at today. The phases can be broken down like this. Phase 1, round up and enslave. They gathered us up and took us from where we ended up. This is in Negro land, in Angola, and the Congo. Like this is where the Portuguese spread us after we left Spain. And they used the Hamites in the region to identify us and enslave us. People love to say that we sold our own people as slaves, but that's just the ignorant talking because they assume every person with melanin is related. We are not. It was not our people who sold us as slaves. Then after this came phase 2. Phase 2, wipe our memories clean from our heritage. This is why we all speak English and have European names and last names tied to slavery and our slave masters. None of these identities are our own. We did not come to this land speaking English. The scene from Roots tells this story well.
Like the horses and hogs, nothing more. Say your name so you know what you are. Say it. Say it. Say it! What's your name? What's your name?
You bakers, or you cooks, you Johnsons, etc. This is just an identity tied to your descendants who were slaves. But you wouldn't know who you were because they did a factory reset with us and wiped us clean from our heritage, which is why Black history only starts once we got here. It never goes to who we were before we were slaves. Then there's phase 3. Reprogram with new religion that ties in old heritage so it feels familiar while there is no longer a personal attachment to it. You see, after generations were wiped clean, they were later retaught the scriptures through a Christian lens, and they were converted into Christianity. This is why they were not allowed to read early on. They had to be taught what the Bible said first.
That's scripture.
Christianity claims to be biblical, but if you actually read the whole Bible without the influence of Christianity, Christianity leads you to a completely different direction than what the Bible actually says. They completely ignore all the promises written in the scriptures. This is why I am not a Christian, but I fully believe in the Bible. Most people that disagree with me are those who know religion more than they know the Bible itself. Okay, and after that is phase 4. Let them go, providing a false sense of freedom. After we are indoctrinated into Christianity, they allowed us to be set free. Slavery was never intended to be forever. It was necessary in order to wipe our memories clear. The agendas in this world would not work if we knew who we were. And again, they were allowed to do this because it was prophesied. Now, an important point to know about this is the point where the beginning of the sellouts occurred. First part of this is that many of the slave masters would impregnate their female slaves, and they would have children. Those children would not be counted as equal with the slavers. They would often become house Negroes. Now, this position was not only for the descendants of the slavers, though, but also for those who attached more to the agenda of the slave masters than the condition of their own people. And they would be given more privileges than the other slaves. Samuel L. Jackson in that movie Django really depicts that well. Now, particularly with the descendants of the slavers, the intermingled ones, later they will be able to get the access to the system if they pass the brown paper bag test. The brown paper bag test was used to judge skin tone, allowing only those lighter than the bag into certain Black social fraternities or sorority spaces. And they were allowed into their fraternities and became the first major sellouts of our people. They were given access to the system, and then they brought the other Negroes in that would not pass the paper bag test, and they aligned them to the agenda the slave masters created. And so these Negroes would get education, and they would become leaders of these newly freed slaves. And they will be the goal for the next generation to attain to. They became the face of the American dream for the newly freed slaves. Please remember that. Anyways, phase 4 was extremely important. It's important to understand that they would never have freed the slaves if they were not indoctrinated into their religion first, and they didn't already have the Negroes tied to them that they controlled. Prince Hall Freemasonry is a major brand that the sellouts come through. They were initiated into the secret society 100 years before the slaves were ever set free. The freeing of the slaves wasn't out the kindness of their hearts, but it was the next phase of an overall agenda that we live through to this day. Next part, phase 5. Oppress them at every turn as they try to rebuild. This was the next part. Everyone gets oppressed, even the sellouts. Major communities were destroyed as the Negroes tried to rebuild. The sellouts thought that because they were attached to the secrets, they would be accepted, but they were not. And there is more to speak to in regards to this, but after slavery, they oppressed the free Negroes heavily, and the sellout Negroes who led through the church never actually read the Bible, but they only attached to the Christian doctrines that they were taught by the slave masters. And they taught the next generations that in order to obtain liberty, you had to get access through their political system. Because somewhere along this journey, we were taught that this system was fair and it was not rigged. So we just needed to vote. At the time, there still wasn't a great acceptance into the system. But those who did, they attached to the Republican Party. But the oppression, it never stopped. They created actual legal laws to oppress us under what was called Jim Crow. You will find that most people that want to deny our heritage and who we are, they always try to say that everyone had slaves. But what they love to ignore is what happened after slavery with the legal Jim Crow laws and organizations that dressed in white sheets just to kill and hang us as we try to live in peace. They love to ignore that history. Anyway, the next phase was phase 6. Direct them to attaching to the system of the oppressors in order to be liberated. You have to understand, these wicked people operate under a doctrine of attaining order from chaos. So what did they do? They created chaos that produced the order that they desired. So think about it. What happens after you viciously oppress, you hang, you kill, you sick dogs on them, hose down their children, segregate them, keep them away from banking and loans? And when they do happen to pass all that, you simply just burn down what they built. What happens when you continuously do this? But you also control their leaders, especially in the churches, who are teaching assimilation and attachment to the system and believe voting is the answer. Yeah, it's easy. You can eventually raise up a false Moses and lead them into the most oppressive agenda that they will ever have. But they willingly will accept it because the majority of the violence starts to go away. This was done through the agendas of Prince Hall Freemasonry and their puppet Martin Luther King Jr., who I use his real name, Michael. He was the puppet used to teach us assimilation into the system. He is easily the most well-known enemy of our people, which is why he gets a statue in their Masonic city, the District of Columbia. And people like to give him a pass because he said he led his people into a burning building. But they never really understood the context of that statement and don't understand he was knowingly a participant directed by his Freemason father, who was his handler. And he was directed to teach assimilation into the system, which he did well. What did he say? Integrate us in the system. Let your oppressors teach your children. Demand that they do. Demand that they let you in their banks. Demand that you can vote. Let me ask you, do you know the art of reverse psychology? Like when good and girls back in the day, girls always liked the guys that they felt were hard to get. So if you ignore them, they might like you. If the person was too easy, it removed the desire. This is completely what they did. If they just had been nice to us and say, hey, come on, start voting, we would have said, nah, we're good. But you act like you're keeping us from it, then we're going to fight to make sure that we have that right. And this is what they did. Take everything away from the people and then have people telling you that this is what we need. Our people literally ran to invisible chains that they locked on themselves, all because the enemy told them that they couldn't have it. And so after integration was put into law, then the next generation, who we know as baby boomers, they now felt that they were now able to get the same access to things that the white people already had. And they thought the mission was to fight against anyone that wanted to keep them from getting it. So just tell a baby boomer that the white man is keeping them from going to college. They're going to march themselves right into those colleges, right into their enemies' hands, and tell them, you're going to give me this college degree. You can't keep this from me. Actually thinking they're opposing the so-called white man when they're doing exactly what the enemy wanted them to do. And so my generation was deeply affected by this phase, and being children of baby boomers and Gen Xers, our parents conditioned us to feel like we're going to be the generation that excelled. Many of us will be the first generation of children who went to college. It was our mission and our duty. We were completely integrated into a system that hated us, but we were taught that it was fair if you just participated in it politically and wasn't a troublemaker. And that leads me to phase 7. Phase 7, indoctrinate them in the ways of satanic influence that they openly reject their creator. By doing this, it always keeps them in the oppressor's hands. You have to understand, they already had us tied to the system, so they didn't have to worry about having us trying to integrate ourselves. We were working hard to come back from behind and obtain things that we never had before. So while our minds were on one thing, which is upward mobility, they were on a whole other agenda. Now, I'm going to prove this in the next part of this series, but understand, before the civil rights era, we had strong communities. We had high marriage rates, the lowest divorce rates, lowest single-parent households. We were a strong community. You have to understand, the other people in this country, they accepted a great deal more liberalism than we accepted. They had movies that were provocative. They had music that began to push the boundaries like rock and roll. Groups like the Beatles began to subtly introduce the doctrines of Satanism. Their magazines were introducing many different themes. And so now that we were integrated, they went full court press on us. Through economics, they were able to limit success in our communities as the 70s and 80s were met with high unemployment and inflation. And the other communities outside of the so-called black communities, they received preference. So our communities were broke, and then they brought in drugs, and they openly admit using the CIA to bring drugs into our communities. I mean, they made major television series displaying it. They brought guns and drugs in our communities and created gangs through Prince Hall Freemasonry, and they destroyed our communities. And they used our own people to do it. You have to understand, there's not a lot worse that you can be than a drug dealer. I remember this quote from The Godfather when they started to get into the drug business. They fought against it because they didn't want to destroy their own communities and their own children. So they said, sell it to us and let us destroy ourselves.
I also don't believe in drugs. For years, I paid my people extra so they wouldn't do that kind of business. I want to control it as a business, to keep it respectable. I don't want it near schools. I don't want it sold to children. In my city, we would keep the traffic in the dark, people, to call it. They're animals anyway, so let them lose their souls.
You see, there are people in our community that did not have the same care, and they only thought about themselves. So there was a strong few who literally sold out their communities for their own betterment. And then they employed other younger brothers to do the same. And so it became clear to those who were truly in power that there was now a door open into destroying our community from the inside. Our people would do it to themselves. They didn't need to do it. They just needed to supply the people. They just needed to give the tools to the people in our community and make them rich, and they would do the destroying themselves. And once they did this with crack, they recognized they had an open market. So all they needed to do was find a business that would be legal for them, and they would get these same drug dealers to push this new drug. And you have to understand, they already made sure that the fathers were out of the home. This was a period of strong fatherless homes. And so with the fathers out of the home, the strength and moral compass was completely gone from this generation. And so the Rev 29s, who controlled these major industries, they literally went into the community, handpicked a few Negroes, and made them sell their soul, giving them access to the system. And in return, these people destroyed our community with a different type of legal drugs. These major record labels were not started by a black man by himself. Pick anyone, Def Jam, Bad Boy, NWA, you will see how it was started. It's not a secret either.
The Cash Money deal. What was it like? You had already did that No Limit deal. Now it's time to take some more guys out of New Orleans.
That's why they came to me. That's why Cash Money came to me. They wanted the No Limit deal. And the great thing was, like, when they came to me in 97, Master P was on his way down. Remember, he started to go play basketball.
Yeah.
And his empire started to decline. Mm-hmm. So I was able to use that to Cash Money's advantage. Mm-hmm. So I was pitching them as the new No Limit, right?
Ooh. I mean, Diddy is probably the first real major example of this in the music industry. Russell Simmons is strong, but he wasn't as vocal as Diddy made himself out to be. Others like Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy, they introduced many things to our people through comedy. It's all the same game. We can literally walk through the progression of it all. And Yahuwah willing, I'll get to explaining this, but this is the overall point. In order for the Rev 29s to keep their identity and their lie remain intact, they could not let the Negroes wake up and learn about who they are and turn back to Yahuwah. You see, once this happened en masse, the game will be up for the whole world. The whole agenda will come crashing down. And so they needed sellouts to keep our community living like fiends, but they could never know it. They started feeding us with a culture that is literally kryptonite. I've been saying kryptonite in the first part. I want you to really understand what I mean. Imagine it like this. Superman, nothing can stop him, right? Unless what? You have some kryptonite. Then he's powerless. All that power, gone. For us, if you know the promises, if we went back to the Torah, keeping Yahuwah's laws, we went back to trust him and we were being obedient to him, we would gain power over the enemy. He says, now it shall come to pass, if you diligently obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to observe carefully all his commandments, which I command you today, that Yahweh your Elohim will set you high above all the nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you, because you obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 1 and 2. But the complete opposite is also true. But it shall come to pass, if you do not obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to observe carefully all his commandments and his statutes, which I command you today, that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. And so understand this. If you promote a culture to our people that represents everything that is against our Creator, you will always keep these people in chains willingly. You will teach them to curse themselves by getting a few Uncle Toms on their side, and this is exactly what happens. Everyone in the mainstream has been employed by the enemy in order to promote to you everything that is against you in order for you to stay oppressed. So everything that's wicked and evil, they began to market to us and then make it our culture. They literally label it black culture. Think about it. 50 Cent, in my opinion, is probably the biggest example of a coon that we have today. He does anything Master tells him in order for him to be successful. They even use him as a gatekeeper to keep other sellouts in line. Like if you don't do what you're supposed to do, they're going to use him to bring it down, and the people love him for it. I mean, 50, he probably bothers me the most because I'm a New Yorker and I rock with him before he was mainstream and he was going against Murder Inc. and all of that. But he completely represents what the modern version of Uncle Tom is. It's just dressed up and packaged in a different way so you don't recognize it. But think about it. He's building movie studios and putting out a whole bunch of content. But who is his target market, and what is it that he promotes to this target market? His major shows, of which he became successful with, were about being drug dealers and criminals. For his content, we have to conduct ourselves in the worst way possible. And as long as he is committed to promoting this, he will be successful, because that is what he was allowed to do. And so then really ask yourself, would he really have a problem selling you out? Of course not, because these are people who have allegedly said that they sold crack to the community in order for them to be successful. These are the heroes of the culture, and this gets very deep. But using 50 as an example is easy because he literally is influential and wealthy, all because he knowingly takes orders. And he admits he would never even go against those who put him in place. He talks about chain of command.
Now, one of the only people that you've been close to that I've never seen you have an issue with is Eminem.
I will never have an argument with him. It don't even matter. It's because he's the reason I put him in a category with my grandparents, because he helped me do things that I couldn't do at the moment. This is why kids are never your equal. Because you offer them life and then you take care of them when they can't take care of themselves. Right? So when he provides an opportunity for me to do something that I couldn't do myself because I just couldn't get over that hurdle, it goes, all right. He said, I take my hit record and give it to 50 if I had it, to give it to him, to make sure he had everything. If I got a hit record in front of me right now and say, yo, if you have this, you're going to have a hit record for sure. But M is going through something right now, so he really needs this hit record. I'm going to give it to him.
Eminem to me is what Dr. Dre is to Eminem.
Yeah.
So to disrespect him in any way is just, you're out of pocket. You're not even following the chain of command that way.
He speaks like a house Negro, and we love him for it. He follows the rules and then gets rewarded. He speaks against who he's allowed to and will never dare to speak against those who he can't. And so while our community needs insiders who expose these people and expose what it is that they're doing and what their agendas are, we have none of that because these people are weak and they will do whatever they tell them to do in order for them to stay on top. And this is why they are weak. It's what he represents along with everyone else that's in the mainstream. It's what they represent that shows that our mindset when reviewing success and influence today, it needs to change. The narrative needs to change. And we must look at all these sellout Negroes as Uncle Toms and coons. They're the biggest examples you can find because in order for them to be famous and rich, they will sell out generations, all under orders of those who stole our identity and have been complicit in our enslavement and oppression. The sellouts are paid millions to distribute our kryptonite, and we love them for it. All this entertainment, all of it is kryptonite for us. And by them selling it to us, it keeps us completely without power and allows us to live in lives created by our enemy. They should not be praised for this, and there must be strong men that stand up against it. They took the men out of our homes and let us fend for ourselves, and this is how we got here. Most of these men are fatherless too, and that's another part of the story. These fatherless men are teaching our men to be weak and feminine. I mean, now so much that these guys are wearing purses and they call it fashion. Either way, many of us grew up with our fathers, or our fathers were weak men themselves and they were compromised. Not all of it was their fault, but the outcome still remains the same. If you care about your future, your children's future, and you understand that we are created beings and will be judged by our Creator, it's time that men specifically become what the system does not want us to be. Just look at what's promoted by the system and what the sellouts promote to us. Review it all, and then understand to be truly rebellious against their system is to not actually be the fake, thug, wicked culture that they created. They created that culture. They want you to be this. The hardest thing to be is to be the righteous, strong men that are obedient to our Father Yahuwah, and that life comes with peace and power, and is not boring and is not unappealing the way Satanism has taught it to you. Thug culture was cultivated and created by the Rev 29s, and it's what they funded and what they paid for. It's the product that they made, and they made sure that they sold it. And all you need to do is look at the men who were used as the products. Are they raising their children as thugs? Are they growing them up in better neighborhoods? Are they sending these kids to private schools, teaching them how to be successful according to the ways of the so-called white man they were rebelling against? They teach you that you're hard and you're a thug when you can disrespect and kill your own people, but you're smart when you can bow down to your true oppressors and gain their acceptance. They teach you to be exactly what the oppressor wants you to be. And you are only fed this example because you are led by coons and Uncle Toms. It was their job to sell you Satanism and market it to you as you just being a rebel. The last track on Diddy's breakout album with Biggie was Suicidal Thoughts, when he's paid heavily to get us to say that when we die, we want to go to hell. And he marketed satanic thoughts and rejection of Yahuwah. You have to see that none of that is by accident. They sold out in order to sell us kryptonite. If you ever read the lyrics to that track, it was a whole declaration against Yahuwah and being what he wants you to be. And he made you declare it. They sold out and were told to sell us kryptonite so that our enemies will always have power over us. In order to break out, it comes with pain and strife. But that is why this is specifically spoken to the men, to show what strength really looks like. Because if you don't step up for your family and those who you love, they will all be led into phase 8. Phase 8. Judgment is coming to this world, and they will bring you down to share their fate. Understand, judgment is coming to this world, whether you want to recognize it or not. It is happening. There are agendas these people are carrying out that by you attaching to them, you give them authority over you. And our Father is also bringing his wrath through great tribulation. And all of you that choose to reject this, call to step up and reject these coons and these Uncle Toms and be what is truly needed in this world, your future is absolutely written that you are going to have a great wrath poured out on you and your family. You will be rejected by the Most High, and you will either die in your rebellion or you will accept a satanic New World Order in order to keep your attachment to this system. Christianity will not save you either. Christianity is just a watered-down version of the scriptures that leads those who follow it into lawlessness and being rejected by the Most High. The answers are in the scriptures. And if you actually read the whole Bible from beginning to end, you will see that Christianity, it does not line up with the scriptures at all. Please know, there are already men out here standing up. And it's not that fake type of standing up like you see from like those D1 types. That's still all controlled. It's manipulation. There are actually true men and women that stand up against this wickedness. And this is what you need to be. There's no compromise. Those of you who promote this culture to your children, are part of the problem, and it's time that us men and women really stand against you and change the narrative. Those pushing this destructive culture to our people and our children must be labeled as sellouts, as Uncle Toms. Look down on them. I look down on you. Yes, I judge you as weak. You need to get stronger. You know this culture is not good for us. You need to stand up for your family and do better for your family and our community. We all need to stand on it and teach our children better and save their lives and save their soul and not let them fall victim to those who wish to oppress us. You living powerless and oppressed at this time, that's a choice. By listening to this, that doesn't mean that you're going to be wealthy. Stop comparing yourself to the losers. Money and wealth mean nothing. If you are a man, you raise your family, you have a woman that respects you, and you're in alignment with our creator, Yahuwah, you are wealthy and rich beyond measure. These should be your goals. These people that have all this money and power are some of the most oppressed, insecure people in this world. Money means nothing. And the good news is that soon this whole system is going to go crashing down and it's going to prove that money means nothing. If you are a man standing in the truth, you will be ready for it. But if you're so weak that you're tied to the culture of our oppressors, then you got problems on you. Now, let me also say this because I think it's important. This is not about our swag. I still rock a NY fitted. I wear my chain. I wear my rings. I look good when I'm in the streets. It's not about our swag unless your swag is feminine. This is about your tolerance to wickedness and evil and you allowing the enemy to control you. It's easy to be a follower. Everything in the mainstream is easy just to follow and accept and call them real. But if that's how you feel when you see all this and you see this culture, it's because you're weak and you lack morals. You lack values. You need to change it. They promoted this culture to us. They created it. The Rev 29s created it. They cultivated it. They funded it. They marketed it to you. You think they couldn't market good values to us? You think in a Christian nation, they couldn't actually promote good values to us? You really need to evaluate this world. And listen, if you still can't break out of it after this is broken down to you, then understand the narrative has changed and you at this time are the loser. You are weak, you are the sellout, and there are men that are now rising up that do not respect you. And we are teaching our families to be aware of men like you and the children that you're raising. You fighting us with your fists doesn't matter because you absolutely have no power. You are a controlled puppet being led by sellout Negroes who, as a majority, have been on their knees, not just bowing, but doing other things in order for them to be your influence. And you proudly accept it. I mean, not to come against the man, I know he's gone, but in order for Michael Jackson to be successful, he had to take the bass out of his voice. Listen, when he gets this award, you think he really talked like that? He was a grown man.
This is one of my best friends in the world. I love Quincy Jones, and he's a wonderful producer and a wonderful person.
Eventually, he changed all of his features. They would not let the biggest star in the world talk with his real voice. Prince, he became a mix between a man and a woman. What was Will Smith's second movie before he became a star in Bad Boys? You are looking at the weakest men in the world and believe that they should be praised when in fact they should be shamed. In order for them to be successful, they had to sell out, and this should not be respected but rejected. And someone had to say it. You must understand that we were never like this. This culture that they want to say is our culture has nothing to do with us truly. This culture was intentionally marketed to us so that we could stay oppressed. And as long as you are attached to it, you will always have no power, and your life is destined to be one without joy and true happiness. We were never like this. And I'm going to really explain this in depth by going back in time. So in the next part, I'm going to explain how this all happened bit by bit. But I wanted to make sure the reason was explained and the intro to this was thorough enough that it covered.
All right, peace and blessings. Peace and blessings, all praises due to the Most High. And you know that we have been covering extensively the case of Nolan Wells, who was found a couple of days after July the 4th in Mississippi. And as the scripture says, all things hidden shall be revealed, and those things done in secret shall be exposed on the mountaintop. And so now there's a friend who has come forth and given interviews about what she saw on the day that Nolan disappeared, as well as some of the activities of his quote unquote friends after the disappearance and when they got back to the mainland. Just listen to this.
So what exactly happened from you guys' side?
From our side, there was an altercation with a different boat, which had other kids on it, black kids. And there was an altercation. There was a fight. Something happened. And they went back to their respective boats or whatever. And when his best friend was on the other boat, so when he went to go like check up on Nolan and everything after the fight, Nolan's boat was gone, but they had stayed for a couple more hours. And so when they got back to land, they had his phone. So Nolan didn't even have his phone. The phone was at one of the boys' house, and they didn't want to give it to his parents, and they had to send somebody to go get the phone from his house. That's why, like, when we checked his location, everybody was like thinking that it wasn't serious because we saw his location and said he was in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, like at his house. But they wouldn't give his phone back to his parents. But the story that they keep trying to push out to everybody is that the boat was sinking and taking on water, and they were telling Nolan that he needed to get on the boat, but Nolan wanted to stay back with a girl that he never met, which he wouldn't have done. Because if that was like, we're all from the same surrounding areas, she goes to Moss Point, which is like 20 minutes away. Why could you not hang out on land when you got back?
If the boat that you came in was sinking and you knew that.
And so that was like the crazy thing is that they're talking about, oh, the boat was sinking and he didn't want to get on the boat and the boat had to get towed back. But if that was the case and he said he wanted to stay there, why did you take his phone back and not leave him on an island without a way to get home?
And so there you see the young lady explaining what happened with the fight. The fight was with a different boat, but when Nolan went to get back on the boat, the guys moved the boat. And they're saying that Nolan decided to stay there, but as everybody knows, you're not going to stay on that main island unless you have your phone. And so the woman even disputes the fact that the story they're telling, oh, the reason why we had to leave is because the boat was taken in water and we had to hurry up and get back. That's why they left, quote unquote, with his phone. But even when they got back with the phone, they're saying that Nolan's parents was having a hard time trying to get the phone back from them. And we all know, if you watch the previous show with Ben Crump said that there were some deleted messages. There were some deleted messages from that phone. Also, she mentioned this mysterious Katie girl, the one that Nolan was talking to and wanted to stay back with. And she made a very valid point. Look, everybody is from the same area. So if he wanted to hang out with her, he would have waited till they got back to the mainland. She said he wouldn't have done that. Now, the story gets deeper because of what they did, allegedly, the white boys did, when they got back to the mainland. Just listen to this.
But in the videos that you can see, obviously the fight was loud enough and big enough to cause all the other surrounding boats to pay attention and that be the main focus of what everybody was seeing at the time.
And Alexis, I do want to ask you something else. How long were they friends?
They've been friends for a minute. I mean, these people have gone to school together since elementary school.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I want to ask another question from the chat. Dark Chocolate said, my thing is, why did the boat really have to get towed back, and was his BODY on it?
There is some speculation, like this is just like hearsay, that the boat was owned by this dude Wyatt. But when the boat got brought back, it was parked at Warren's house, which is his mom is the judge or whatever. And somebody said they drove by like later that night and like they were cleaning out the boat. Like it was like dark night, not like regular time when you would clean out a boat. It was like later at night. And then there was a girl on the boat that's not in any of the pictures or wasn't the girl that he was talking to. And When she got back on land, she turned off like her Snap location, but her best friend still had her location on Find My iPhone. And she was at, all of them were at one house for like 4 hours.
And so there you hear the young lady say, late at night, they were cleaning out the boat. And there was another girl there. They were all at this particular house for 4 hours. It is also alleged that they went out to other parties later that night. Now, if your friend is missing, his family is looking for him, nobody knows where he is, the last thing on your mind would be to go out and start partying again. Now, mind you as well, the boat was owned by his friend, quote unquote, Wyatt, but they took it to Warren's house. And Warren is the one where his stepmother is the judge. Now, of course, if she's a judge, she has, those kids have got themselves in trouble. Hey, man, come on, let's go to my mom's house. Man, she's a judge. She'll let us know what to do. She'll tell us, she'll cover up. And that is when, evidently, this judge, Ashley Cole, started to delete her Facebook page. And also, she told everybody else to do so. Now, that judge has recently came back out and made a statement. We'll cover that statement in another video. But let's go on to listen to more of what this friend, quote unquote, Alexis, has to say about, once again, the night in question.
They wouldn't give his phone back to his parents, and they were seen eating out the next day. Wow. And when somebody asked them, like, hey, why aren't you out looking for your friend? They said, y'all already think we did it. Did what? Exactly. And then also that night, they were seen at multiple parties when they got back from the island around like 7 o'clock. So they still continued to go out that night, knowing that Nolan wasn't with them and that nobody had seen him.
So you heard what she said. When they were out partying, they were out eating, enjoying the pleasures of life. When people asked them, why are you not out looking for your friend? Their response was, y'all already think we did it. Who said so? That sounds like, to me, a guilty conscience. Let's continue.
So, sorry, Alexis, quickly, you said there was the altercation that happened on the boat was with other black kids. There were other black people on the island.
There obviously, yes. Right. But they rode on separate boats. There was supposed to be black people on the boat with Nolan, but they got told last minute that they couldn't go because there wasn't like enough space.
Now, you heard her say that. She said there were other black people who were supposed to be on the boat with Nolan, but they were told they couldn't go because it was not enough space. Now, that coincides with what his best friend said, that he said, well, yeah, I was going to ride with Nolan, but I had to get on another boat because it was too full. So once again, we have to take everything as credible when it lines up with what other people have said.
Yes, Alexis, I do want to ask you too as well. So you did already confirm that one of the parents was a judge, so thank you for that. Also, I wanted to ask you, can you confirm that all of their social media has been scrubbed? So is it scrubbed or is it deactivated?
Only 2 of them are deactivated, but a couple of them are just private now. But the mom, Judge Sheik, did deactivate hers. So like only 2 of them are actually, so 3 of them I guess are deactivated, and then the rest of them are just private.
So Alexis, I want to ask you one question. And the phone was at this judge's house, right?
I'm not sure where it was, but it was on the boat, but they weren't out trying to give it to their parents.
Because I'm asking because if they were scrubbing the boat, and I have to say allegedly, I mean they may have scrubbed the phone too.
That's what I'll say what I do again.
Because Sam told us that the body was moved. Can you confirm that?
I have no topics on that, but it's just very it doesn't make sense how his body was found in the first place that they looked.
Yes, and the reason why I'm asking that because if his body was moved, they could have used his face to unlock it and then put him back.
That is all.
All right, so we'll stop it right there at that last point because they said his body was found in the place where they first looked. And they asked the question, was his body on the boat when they left? Because if it was, then they could have used his face to unlock the phone, go through and delete the messages like Attorney Ben Crump said that the messages had been deleted, then use the boat to take his body back and dump it when nobody was looking. And so that is the sinister nature of this whole thing. But only thing we have to do is speculate and formulate theories because they are not talking. You know, if my best friend died when I was, out with them, and I ain't have nothing to do with it, I'm going to be on social media. Hey, we did this, we did that, we did this. I'm doing podcasts, I'm doing interviews. This is what happened. So because once again, there's such a veil of secrecy around it, then I figured that they have something to hide. But, we're going to keep digging into this. Shout out to that friend who brought some things to light. Why wouldn't you want to give his family the phone back? Unless you had something to hide or you wanted to get off the phone, why would you be out partying the night and the day after that your best friend, died? And why would you be in such a rush to get back with this man's phone? So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but we're going to dive deeper into this situation as more information comes about. But y'all let me know what y'all think about.
They murdered that little boy, man. What Nolan Wells' parents found in his phone confirms beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt. They murdered that little boy, man. They murder him, and the police, the law enforcement agencies, the judges, coroners, everybody in that city responsible for this investigation is working in cahoots to make sure they get away with it. That little boy was murdered by some powerful people in that city, and they making sure them powerful people don't get held accountable. Nolan Wells' family has retained the services of Benjamin Crump to ensure Nolan gets justice, however that may be. They brought Benjamin Crump in to launch a private investigation into the death of Nolan because whatever they have seen up until this point, they've seen enough to know they can't trust the local police department. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the only option they had if you take the circumstance into consideration. If this does end up being a murder investigation, if Nolan was murdered, one of the suspects, Warren Mama, is a sitting judge in the city. It's a small town. They all grew up together. The police department, the sheriffs, the detectives, people who were investigating this probably is coming in with biases. Oh, nah, Warren wouldn't do no such. Nah, not Ashley's boy. Ashley's boy will do no such thing. What? Wyatt, Eric? Nah, those are good boys. So they're already coming in with a biased eyes and a biased lens. They're going into this assuming these people did nothing wrong and Nolan just got drunk and drowned. Even though every single detail, every single evidence, every single piece of information that has come out has pointed into the opposite direction of that.
You mentioned earlier there are some contradictions.
Yes.
What gives you confidence or perhaps concern about the investigation so far?
Well, the fact that they continue to tell the family that we don't see any evidence of any foul play, even though you have students who recorded an altercation while they were on the boats of argument where you had Nolan and somebody yelling at one another on the boat. So that's the issue. And then you have the young lady make a statement and she says, well, Nolan and I finished talking and Nolan said he was going back to the boat. And then the boys on the boat said, no, Nolan told them he was going to stay with her. And so they are conflicting. She's saying he went and got on the boat. They saying he didn't get on the boat. So which is it? And all we know is Nolan is dead.
I've never seen a police department in such a hurry to close out an investigation. They have refused to take any of the new evidence into consideration. And let's slow it down for a second. The story they're giving us doesn't make sense. The story that Nolan friends are giving us doesn't make sense. And it shouldn't make sense to a trained police officer. Nolan came to Horn Island with Wyatt, Warren, and Eric. They were on the boat with Nolan. Wyatt, Warren, and Eric claim they left the island without Nolan. They have no idea where he was, even though they came together. Their excuse is Nolan told us he wasn't going to come with because he was busy talking to this chick called Katie that he liked and he hit it off with while he was on the island. Then Katie said, hell nah, he wasn't going home with me. We actually cut our conversation short because he told me he had to go back to the boat with his friends. So which one is it? Who do we believe, Katie or Warren, Wyatt, and Eric? The reason why I tend to believe Katie's account of things is because Ashley Cole, Warren's mama, told on themselves. Look at this right here. Look at how implausible this is, okay? She goes, Warren was interviewed by the Jackson County Sheriff Department and cooperated fully. He saw Nolan last at around 3 p.m. on July 4th. You would only ask your homie, hey, bro, you coming with us or you staying? We about to go. You would only ask him that when you are about to go. So if you last saw him at 3 p.m. and that's when you asked him, because again, according to them, they asked him, hey, you coming with or you staying? He said he's staying. Okay, cool. You would only ask that when you're about to go right at that moment. So if you last saw him at 3, then you would have asked him that at 3, but then that wouldn't make sense because why would you ask him that at 3 when you guys eventually left at 4:30 p.m.? So the last y'all seen Nolan was at 3 p.m. when y'all asked him, hey, you coming with, bro? We about to go. Then y'all stayed an additional hour and 30 minutes. Really? That makes sense? Really? That don't make sense at all. But this actually coincides with what Katie said, which is, oh, we cut our conversation short because he told me he was headed back to the boat with his friends because they had to go. That would mean that Nolan went back to that boat. Nolan was on that boat. Something happened on that boat. We seen an argument take place on camera of Nolan arguing with somebody on a boat. But the police says there's nothing to investigate. There's no foul play. It doesn't make sense. And think about it for a second, okay? So they left around 4:30 p.m. when the boat was taking on water. They had an issue with the bridge pump. First off, okay, if a boat is taking on water, and you guys are about 10 to 15 miles away from mainland. So these kids, these inexperienced kids, hopped on a boat that were 10 to 15 miles away from mainland, about what, a 30 to 40 minute ride. The boat was taking on water and they decided to still hop on and go 40 minutes back to mainland. How does that make sense? They gave Nolan a heads up. They had to go because the boat was malfunctioning. Then they proceeded to stay an additional 1 hour and 30 minutes while the boat was malfunctioning. Then they hopped on the boat that was malfunctioning to sail 15 miles to mainland. What? What are we talking about here, man? Are y'all crazy? Are y'all insane? That's why people is looking at the police department like, yo, you guys is compromised, homie. Now, we not letting Katie off the hook either, okay? Even though I tend to believe Katie's account of things, I'm not going as far as some of the people who know Nolan. I seen some of Nolan's friends on Facebook talking about, yeah, say what y'all want. I'm standing 10 toes behind Katie. She would never do nothing. I said, all it takes is a little white girl, man, to get you niggas to start shucking and jiving, man. Start buck dancing and break dancing for that white woman. Nolan is dead, and you thought the best use of your time was to come on Facebook to comfort Katie as if Katie is a victim in this situation? And another thing, Mary Polk says, I'm standing behind Katie McCormick. I understand y'all don't know her, but me and 1,000 other of us have literally slept, ate, and partied at the McCormick house. Don't forget that's Dixie's child. Nolan is dead, and the first thing you think to do is to come on Facebook to come for Katie? What? Excuse me? Listen, as far as I'm concerned, everybody is a suspect until this gets solved. Sorry, you was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Too bad. Nolan's dead. At least you got your life, right? I'm sorry, boo-hoo. You got to deal with some suspicion until the investigation is over. Boo-hoo. I feel like if you care about Nolan, that's the least you can do. The least you can do is tolerate some suspicion until the investigation is over with. But y'all are disgusting. Y'all are disgusting. Y'all love for white proximity. Oh my, it is trifling. Now, Katie McCormick responded back and she goes, what's understood don't have to be said. I love y'all. Just pray for his family and his friends. I'm good. And all I can do is pray for healing over them. This is a terrible situation all in all. So now pray for his friends will indicate they're not friends. So I'm assuming that they probably just met there. He was trying to holler at her. Who knows, man? But with all this coming out, right, we have the timelines that don't match. We got like the fight video that came out. The police don't really care about that either way. So the kid go missing. The kid end up dead. There's a video of him arguing with somebody before his death, and they don't care about that either. Cool. So now the parents found something in his phone, and now all of a sudden the police want to seize the phone. Man, y'all better not. Don't forget, though, the very suspicious and troubling circumstance surrounding Nolan's phone. See, Nolan's friends, they claim they left him on the island and they went to the mainland on a boat that was taking water on a 40-minute sail. But they did that, though. Okay, cool. So they claim they left Nolan on the island, but somehow they were still in possession of Nolan's phone. They claim he left the phone in the boat. Nolan's mama is like, hell nah, I know my son got detachment issues with that phone. Ain't no way in the heck my son is staying on the island with no phone. Ain't no way in the heck my son is staying outside for multiple hours without his phone in his hand. What are you guys talking about? Heck no. Heck no. Now, eventually she went to retrieve the phone, and when she went to retrieve the phone, what she discovered in the phone blows this entire case open.
As far as we know, his mother, Christine, and his father, Elmo, say they haven't gotten any answers. They, have been asked to turn over his cell phone to the Mississippi law enforcement authorities. But even that is troubling to them because they're saying messages that were deleted from his cell phone. So they want to try to dot every I and cross every T and investigate everything. They said it's very improbable that Nolan would not have wanted his cell phone with him if he was going to stay on the island.
Mm-hmm. The deleted text messages on his phone, his parents found that? Who found that out?
No, well, they got his phone, so they're trying to figure out there's deletions on the phone, and they're trying to look at what is that about. There's so many inconsistencies going on, and so we're going to have, with our investigators and our associates, we're going to list all the inconsistencies down. We just got onto the case yesterday, so we have been staying up late with the family, talking to friends, talking to people who were there on that 4th of July, trying to piece together what really happened to Nolan Wells.
There were things deleted in a dead man's phone that he didn't have access to. How? There were things deleted in a dead man's phone. Understand this. If Nolan's friends were the ones who got into that phone and was able to delete things, what are y'all deleting? What are y'all trying to hide? Like what exactly are y'all trying to cover up here? What? Now, I don't think they're not savvy enough not to go to recently deleted and delete that in that folder as well. I think what happens is probably the mama's pulling up to get the phone. They probably was running out of time, deleted a couple of things, ain't really have time to fully go to recently deleted and delete the rest. They got to do a full forensic of that phone and figure out what exactly got deleted, when it got deleted, everything, even the things that are out of recently deleted because it was deleted from out of that as well. Find out what it was. Also, too, here's another element. How do you get into a dead man's phone that got Face ID? If, again, we're going by the theory here, if his friends who had possession of his phone that he allegedly left behind, how would they be able to get into that phone that had Face ID on it? There's only one way. Unless you like the parents, right? The family members who could probably like contact Apple and get into the dead man's phone. But if you his homies and you his friends, the only way you will get into a dead man's phone that has Face ID on it is if you have access to the body. The body is on the boat. You take that body, you put the phone to the body, the phone on lock, and now you have access to the phone. That's the only way. Because can y'all also amuse me as to how y'all think they got into a dead man's phone with Face ID if the body wasn't on the boat? Before we even get to what they were deleting, why they deleted it, can we also, can we just start step by step? Okay, how did they get into a dead man's phone to delete something? It has Face ID on it. It has security measures. You can only get into that phone if that body was in your possession and you can, cool, blah, blah, blah. Hey, yo, get rid of this. I don't think the things that they saw were the only things that got deleted. Because them kids, if they did do it, allegedly, right? Because we dealing with mamas as judges here, but we gotta be careful, homie. If them kids did do it, they savvy enough to delete things out of recently deleted. I can promise you that. I think they ran out of time and just got to deleting some things last minute. I'm telling you, this is getting spooky. And the police got the nerve to say, yeah, give us the phone. Man, never give you guys the phone. Benjamin Crump is so savvy, he's taking Nolan and taking him to DC for an independent autopsy because he don't even trust the local people to do it. Because he think they're all in cahoots. And I agree, I co-sign that. But the police department that has ignored all the evidence, that have rushed to quickly say, man, there's no signs of foul play here. He died, he drowned. That police department now wants quite possibly the biggest smoking gun in this case. Hell nah, hell nah. Send it off to an independent agency. Let them do the investigation. You better not give that police unrestricted access to that phone. That phone comes back with everything wiped out, man. All the evidence gone, man. I'm telling y'all. But Ben Crump has confirmed, they're taking Nolan Wells for an independent autopsy because they don't trust nothing that's going on in that small town. They believe that everybody is in cahoots.
To have him flown to a medical examiner in Washington, D.C., where his body will be preserved to do an autopsy to study every aspect of if he had any physical injuries to his body beyond drowning.
Mm-hmm. And where are you in that process now?
The body is going to be flown today. We expect to have the results of that independent autopsy on.
We're going to wait for that autopsy, but if the theory here is he got thrown overboard, what would the autopsy show? If he was just a poor swimmer, they threw him overboard, he drowned. What would the autopsy show exactly? But we're going to wait, man. But this is some bad stuff, man. This is some bad stuff here, bruh. It sounds like a young black boy got murdered in cold blood. And, the people who allegedly did it are probably going to get away with it because they're powerful. Y'all let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think about
A death investigation is underway tonight in Oak Island, where police are looking into how Patrice Bass died at the Ocean Walk condos. Investigators say the initial findings from the medical examiner show that she fell, and evidence shows no signs of criminal activity. The department is awaiting a full autopsy and toxicology report on her body.
There's a scripture that says, he who covers their sins will not prosper, but he who confesses them will receive mercy. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings, all praises to the Most High. This story is about a North Carolina mom, and I'll show you Patrice Jones Bass, who was found at an Oak Island, North Carolina resort area, naked in a pool of blood in the middle of the night. And what's so horrific about this incident is that this happened on May 16th, almost 2 months ago, and they are just reporting about it to the public as of yesterday, July the 7th. So they known about this woman's death, and they're now just informing the public, yeah, we are investigating it, and we are waiting on the autopsy reports. After almost 2 months of silence. Why do you ask? Let me show you. It's because of this article right here from my good brother, Gerald Jackson at the NCB, that was published on July 6th. And you see the title, North Carolina Mom Found Naked in a Pool of Blood at Oak Island Condo. Family Slams Lazy Investigation. And I'm going to read you this article. Then I'm going to read you the one where the police actually responded to this article after finally coming out with that short news clip you just saw. But here it says, 40-year-old successful Black mother of 3 dies on vacation with kids. Body discovered hours later with strange injuries. No witnesses questioned. No autopsy released. Oak Island Police Department is silent. More than 6 weeks after Patrice Jones Bass was found dead, her family and best friend are still pushing for answers in what they describe as a deeply suspicious death at Ocean Walk condominiums. The 40-year-old Durham native and Henderson homeowner who worked in management at an accounting firm was vacationing with her 3 children, one with special needs, when she died on May 17, 2026. According to her best friend, Rachel Andrews, who spoke exclusively with the NCB, Bass was last heard from around 11:30 p.m. on May 16th when she spoke with a male friend named Shane while on the elevator. The group, which included her estranged husband's aunt, a guy she was dating named James, and the others, had gone for a beach walk earlier that night. After returning to the condo, the children were told to go to bed around 12:30 a.m. Carolyn, the aunt, was already in her room. Andrews said James told her he tried to follow Patrice into the bedroom they were sharing, but the bathroom door was locked. He went back to the living room and fell asleep on the couch. And here is a social media post of Patrice Jones saying that she arrived with her clan yesterday. And there you see them taking pictures, posting food, beaches, pictures, and all of that. According to Andrews, James said he woke up around 1:30 a.m. and noticed Patrice was gone and found her dress on the balcony with lingerie inside of it, as if she had planned to surprise him. James said he searched the hotel room for Patrice, then went onto the balcony and looked down where he saw her lying face down naked in a pool of blood. Andrews recounted. He reportedly ran downstairs and found police already approaching. He told Andrews he placed his hand on the back and she felt cold. Her body was not discovered until sometimes between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. Andrews says she didn't receive the call that Patrice had died until around 6 or 7 a.m. She was found naked in a pool of her own blood, Andrews said. Bruises on the right side of her face and chin, no scratches on her arms. Her head wasn't busted open. She only had one broken fingernail on her left hand, and she was left-handed. Wouldn't you brace your fall? Andrews, who prepared Bass for the open casket viewing, said the injuries did not match what you'd expect from a fall from a 4-story balcony. Investigators have reportedly given conflicting explanations, including suggestions of self-unalivement. One investigator texts Andrews that sometimes we never find out the why. And here's that text. Unfortunately, a lot of times we never get the why part of these cases unanswered. They didn't even ask me for the code to her phone until almost 2 weeks later, Andrews said. Nobody has been questioned. It makes you wonder if they just don't care or know something they aren't sharing. Andrews noted that it took Patrice's estranged husband, who was reportedly 2 weeks away from finalizing their divorce, quite a while to arrive at the scene. Later, Patrice's estranged husband and James reportedly rode back to Raleigh, Durham together, during which the husband gave James Patrice's gold Nefertiti necklace. And that is her picture again. There you see her with the white guy in the background. I hope that is not James, who she was there with. Nevertheless, we'll continue. The family has not received the autopsy report. No official cause of manner of death have been released by the Oak Island Police Department or the medical examiner's office. So that is the article that the NCB released one day, July 6th, before Oak Island Police came out publicly about this death. So they have been silent for 2 months. Now, you heard the story. She came there with a friend, a boyfriend, her children. She was on the phone with another guy. Then, she went to bed. And, he wanted to surprise her, or, he tried to get into the room. The door was locked. Next thing you know, he wakes up and she's laying face down on the floor, 4 stories down. Now, as you heard them say, when he touched her, she felt cold. There was no head busting or pooling of blood. The injuries on her body was not consistent with the fall. So that remains suspicious right there. No witnesses were questioned. Oak Island is one of those pretty much notoriously all white areas that white people go vacation on, and you saw her in the picture. Once again, if you see this picture right here, you see there's, a white guy standing there, also a white guy holding the phone. Nevertheless, the fact is why were they so quiet? And equally so, they actually retaliated against the NCB on the same day that they released this short news clip. This is the article of him explaining what they said about his reporting of the situation, even though they never reported it. Now here it says, Oak Island police attacked reporting on Patrice Jones Bass' death, but never told the public she died. The department calls the NCB article tabloidism and misinformation, while admitting they issued no public notice about the May 17th death at Ocean Walk condominium for nearly 2 months. The Oak Island Police Department has issued a public statement criticizing the NCB's reporting on the death of Patrice Jones Bass, while acknowledging they never informed the public that a 40-year-old woman had died at a popular 4-story beach condominium complex, Ocean Walk Condominiums. In a lengthy response published today, the department called the article tabloidism and accused it of spreading misinformation. They defended their investigation, stating it remains an open death investigation and has not been classified as a homicide, although the NCB never identified the case as a homicide. They also claimed that initial reports from the medical examiner indicate injuries consistent with a fall. While we are not naive to the fact that various circumstances could lead a person to fall from a balcony, the family's concern about the investigation and lack of transparency remain valid and deserve to be taken seriously. According to Oak Island Police, they conducted a full investigation with multiple officers, the Criminal Investigation Division, neighborhood canvassing, and interviews. Yet for nearly 2 months, the public, including residents and visitors in a town that relies heavily on tourism, was given zero official information that a woman had died at Ocean Walk condominiums on May 17, 2026. In contrast, when 2 people were found dead inside a home in Oak Island in August 2025, the town quickly issued a public notice explaining there was no previous or imminent danger and that the matter was under investigation. And I'll just stop it right there because that last statement pretty much sums it up. In 2025, last year, a couple died and y'all quickly issued a statement. Why not in this case? What are you hiding? What are you covering up? Now, once again, this is a Black woman. Maybe that's why her death was ruled, kind of swept under the rug. Oh, we don't want the public to know that a Black woman died, possibly under nefarious circumstances in our Ocean Walk condominiums. But the fact that, once again, the police didn't come out until our good brother Gerald Jackson at the NCB exposed the story after talking to credible family members, and then they want to come out and say what happened. That right there is suspicious in itself. Why hadn't you been come out 2 months ago if you are investigating? Why does an independent journalist have to bring this story to the public's light? That is very suspicious. There's no telling what happened to this young lady because there's no witnesses. Family hasn't received an autopsy, no investigation pretty much. So we're going to keep an eye out on this story and see what kind of cockamamie story that they can come up with. But as the scripture says, everything that is hidden shall be exposed, and all things done in secret will be exposed on the mountaintop. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this story in the comments. Y'all see the number 919.
Anthony, this motion for a new trial proves that he was set up by the entire legal system. Guys, we got to get into this. Now, as it relates to this entire, I think it's a 200-page motion, let's kind of review some of the things that we're learning, okay? Let's get into it. We learned that there were secret meetings in the chambers with no court reporter. The state reneged on a deal that affected Carmelo testifying at trial. That's what we learned yesterday. Now today, we're still getting into what happened as it relates to this particular trial and why Carmelo's dream team is petitioning the court to say, listen, we need a do-over, okay? First ground for new trial. The trial violated the defendant's Sixth Amendment right to a public trial by materially restricting public access to the trial proceedings without the findings and alternatives required, okay? I'm not going to read the documents. I am going to just give you guys a high-level overview. I see a lot of people reading the documents. It's too many documents to read. What I'm going to do is just pull out everything that you want to know. Now, the second ground for a new trial is that the state basically had unrecorded meetings limiting. So basically what they did, they had meetings that were off the record, which were unrecorded, okay? They decided to not bring in the character evidence of the Metcalfs, pretty much. It's pretty much what it means, because we know Carmelo's character wouldn't have mattered, okay? He does not have a history like these boys do. Ultimately, Carmelo was going to testify, but then at the last minute, he didn't testify. And all of these things speak to the credibility of the court And this is why Carmelo's dream team is saying he needs to get a new trial. Now, let's get into this rogue ass judge. Now, we know that Judge Roach gave, and this is in the motion for a new trial. I am just not going to read it verbatim. I'm just going to give you guys a high level overview of what it states. So let's see, if I were to go here and go into, I'm going to go tell you where I am because I really read this thing really, really fast. All right, so this is where we are, okay? This is where we're going to begin because this is where it gets juicy. Now, we know that Judge Roach gave a statement. In his statement, he basically stated that he, in fact, restricted public access. And this was per a written statement that he provided to Fox News after the trial. This is what Judge Roach explained. He said, I understood the public's desire to know what happened in the courtroom. The overwhelming focus on my ruling regarding the media in the courtroom was to protect the process, the witness, and the jury. And then he says this, now that the trial is over, it is important to me to provide transparency. Now, listen, this is what Carmelo's attorneys are saying. This statement is an admission that public access was restricted during the trial and that transparency was withheld until the trial was over. Keep in mind, the judge wants to now, after the trial, he wants to give an interview and talk about transparency when we didn't even see transparency. How is that? So Carmelo's attorneys is simply saying that this was restricted, and now that the trial is over, now that the dumb judge wants to come out and talk about transparency, sir, you are a year too late, okay? The public trial, so basically what his attorneys is saying, thank you, but no thank you, because you should have did this during the trial proceedings, okay? They also say, set aside the trial judge's own admission. The picture is complete. The judge acknowledged that an audio feed was feasible, stating that he sometimes maybe should have, or at least audio streamed or something so people could hear it. So he realizes that this was something that he could do, but he said he declined it because he felt like fairness and the safety of the people that were a part of the trial were most important, and he felt like people would distort the information anyway. So he pretty much said, listen, I didn't do it because even if I would have did it, people were going to run with their own narratives, which is crazy because we all are different individuals. And yeah, we're going to have our different account for what happened. But as a judge and as his dream team gets into these motions, they pretty much lay out various different case law in different individual instances where the court should always remain open. And if it is an instant that the court cannot seat everybody, all they needed to do was stream it live. And in the instance they said, hey, we don't want to stream live faces, they could have just did the audio, and they did not do it. So pretty much what his attorneys is saying is this was something that was intentionally done. Now let's get into this portion right here. The secrecy did not end at the courtroom door. It reached the court record itself. Keep in mind, guys, the complete transcript is sitting in the judge's chambers, untranscribed, and he just has it with him as if it is his personal belonging. So the dream team, Carmelo's attorneys, say that the secrecy did not end at the courtroom door. It reached the court record itself, beyond the gag order that silenced the parties, their counsel, witnesses. The court directed the motions and subpoenas be hand delivered. Now, Where in the heck in the history of America do subpoenas not go through a regular process? But in this case, they wanted subpoenas to be hand delivered to the court and held under seal. Not the district court, not the district clerk who serves as a custodian of the case file, but this particular file is kept in the judge's chambers rather than the district clerk's public file. Where in America, I'm gonna say it again, does the judge hold on to a file as if it's his personal business? This is weird. It says no public order authorizing any type of arrangement as it relates to gag orders or any type of off-the-record dealings that they did with this case. There was nothing that actually authorized it. It was just what they did. Let me just give you an example. There was no public order authorizing any arrangement supported by the notice, hearing, and findings that the law requires before a record may be sealed. This never happened. The docket nonetheless reflects a series of orders restricting the record. An order to redact, June 25th, 2025, an order to file a redact, an order to seal, both June 11th, 2026, and a further order entered June 18th, 2026, that the public docket leaves untranscribed. So pretty much the entire court proceeding, guys, in a normal procedure, you can get this from the court reporter. Well, you can't because they have not transcribed it, which is stating they are hiding information and they don't want the public to see it. On top of that, it's held in the judge's chambers and you just can't get it. His attorney said the filings in this high-profile prosecution were thus unavailable for public inspection. And this is the ordinary cause that, this is ordinary. So people asking for these documents, this is not something that is new. This is just the order of business as it relates to these type of cases or any case. I mean, go look up anybody that has, had a court case. You can get the transcripts, you can get all of this. But for some reason, there's something really weird going on here. Carmelo's attorneys go on to say the sealing was not confined to particular filings. So generally, in some cases, you'll see where they'll say these particulars are going to be under seal. Maybe let's just give you an example. For this particular case, because they were minors, they may say, okay, we're not going to reveal their full names, okay? But what they're saying here, this sealing, the sealing of this case was not confined to particular things. The entire court file was placed under seal by oral argument with no written order, no public notice, no open hearing, and no findings to justify withholding the record from public view. So basically, they agreed that they were going to seal this because they just don't want the public to see it. So this is simply what they have been saying throughout this entire motion for new trial. Remember when I went over this yesterday, and I want to kind of go there because I want to make sure you guys can follow me, okay? If you guys have not saw my first set, I'm going to show you where to go because I want you to read the first set that I did so that you can kind of know where we are. All right, so let me kind of get into that. I'm actually picking up where I left off yesterday. Again, this is like 200 pages. So this is where, okay, guys, here are the one that I started yesterday. And if you guys want to go catch up on that, that would be Carmelo Anthony trial judge Roach does the unthinkable to hinder the appeal process. Because in that particular video, what I learned is that pretty much the file is still under seal. And what we know is that the judge, he has the file in his office, which is crazy because why do you have it in your office, in your chambers? I'm sorry. So Go back and, take a look at that if you want to catch up to where we are today. So I'm gonna try to get about 3 or 4 of these out of the way. So, it does cause for me to have I got to read this stuff. So let's get back into what it says. Again, I am not reading everything. I am providing you guys a high level overview. Again, I'm not going to read this word for word, but I'm going to summarize it all. The order goes to say that basically what they were doing was deliberate and intentional. For instance, we're going to close this particular proceeding off to the public. We'll only allow a few seats. And then even with those few seats that we say that we have, we may tomorrow decide that those seats are not available. So the access to the public was restricted. The record was restricted. None of this was favorable for Carmelo. The Dream Team goes on to say, at a conference held on June 29, 2023, the court advised the parties that the entire court file has been sealed by oral order and that counsel would be Carmelo's attorneys, because keep in mind, Carmelo's attorneys are working on the appeal. And in order for them to complete the appeal, they actually have to see the transcripts. But guess what? The transcripts are not done. So basically what they're doing is they are still trying to hinder this process. They're still trying to make sure Carmelo doesn't get an appeal. By doing so, they are restricting access to the file. So what Carmelo's attorneys had to do, and trust and believe they are working their behinds off, is they had to get statements from Mike Howard. They had to get statements from people who were there. So all of this that I have read is information and investigations that they had to do simply because the court has not provided them access to the actual transcript. So what this goes on to say is that the court basically told Carmelo's attorneys that this entire case is under seal and that Carmelo's attorneys could not access the files unless they first agreed to not disclose whatever it was that they observed. So they said, listen, we'll let you see the files, but you cannot say or tell anybody what you saw. Carmelo's attorneys responded that they could not commit to withholding information that they had not yet seen. Because what kind of shit is this? You want me to say I won't tell or disclose what I saw? I don't even know what I'm going to see. So Carmelo's attorney said, listen, yeah, we can't do that. So the court decided to make the file available for inspection only if they came and went into the judge's chambers. Now, listen, guys, this shouldn't be happening. Carmelo's attorney should not have to travel down to country-ass Collin County Court to sit in the judge's chambers to review a file. This is an issue because, it should be provided electronically. They should not have to hustle through traffic and go sit in dusty-ass Judge Roach's chambers to look at transcripts. Now, this is what they said. The fact that they had to go in chambers and look at the transcripts basically confirms what they say as it relates to the secrecy as it surrounds this case. A file being kept literally in the judge's chambers beyond the reach of the public and the defense, that's not what happened, guys. So in order concealing and sealing the entire file, it proves what they're saying. This was done without notice, hearing or findings, sealing this case, not making it available to the public, continuing to deny access to any portions of this file, pretty much proves their case that this all was done in secrecy. And this entire trial needs a redo because it was done with deliberate, like they did this deliberate, okay? So another point they reference, that restricting access to this file impaired Carmelo's ability, and also, well, we should say his attorneys, the ability to investigate everything that happened here. And keep in mind, guys, they have a short deadline. So again, this was more roadblocks that were through to hopefully get them to miss deadlines, to not be able to prepare the adequate motion. Because listen, you're telling me I cannot have access to the file unless I drive in the judge's chambers. How much time do you have? Like, this is absurd. So basically, it says counsel could not responsibly, they did not agree that they would not disclose any information, okay? But it was an issue because it prevented counsel from inspecting the complete file during this period. Keep in mind, guys, they have limited time to be able to look at this information. They got to be able to inspect it, but they can only do so if they come into the judge's chambers. The public, so this is a statement that they say, and I'm going to read this. The public and the press hold a constitutional right to the access of criminal proceedings and to the records of those proceedings, and a court may not seal the record of a judicial proceeding in secret. The right of access is a fundamental element of the rule of law, and a court's discretion to seal is to be exercised with clarity. Like, you just don't go and seal cases. And they gave a few different court cases, basically saying the court did not look at the rule of law. They pretty much did what they wanted to do. Thus, when they sequestered this record, it did more than offend the public's right of access. This directly harmed Carmelo. The period after the judgment was marked. So after Carmelo was found guilty, immediately his attorney withdrew on June 10th. I want y'all to pay attention to this. After he was found guilty, his attorney withdrew that day, okay? The court appointed an appellate attorney, which they then replaced by a new appellate attorney. Now, this is before the defendant's previous counsel was kind of able to be substituted. So essentially what they're saying is this was a deliberate act to do exactly what they're trying to do, cause confusion. Because if we continue to, like for instance, with this public pretender that they had, they gave him one person and then they replaced it. So ultimately, this is how this works. If an attorney takes on your case, the attorney needs time to review the case. They need time to meet with the other attorney to review the case. What they're saying is they consistently switched appellate attorneys, and this was done purposeful because they knew that he only had a 30-day timeline. So all while they were switching these different people out, guess what was happening, guys? The clock was running on Carmelo. This was all done strategically. They did this on purpose. And also, despite all of this happening and them consistently switching appellate attorneys, in order to evaluate the materials, you needed to go in the judge's chambers. Not forgetting about the hard statutory deadline that the attorneys needed to pretty much come up to speed amongst all these things that were continuing to happen. This is a lot. So again, let me kind of switch gears here. These attorneys are really good. Keep in mind, I want y'all to understand, these attorneys had to prepare damn near 200 pages of one document. And then I haven't even looked at the pages on another document. This is without the transcript, guys. I don't know how they were able to do this, but what they had to do is conduct extensive interviews with people who were there. they did have to reach out to attorney Mike Howard, which I know I just spoke to someone and they feel like they're not pushing the ineffective assistance of counsel. And maybe they're not pushing that because they are relying on Mike Howard to provide a lot of this information because, of course, they don't have the transcripts. So I think these attorneys they are great. You know, reading this stuff, I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be an attorney because I don't know how I would have been able to pull this off. They were able to pull this off despite the transcript that Judge Roach is holding in his chambers and he needs to be arrested, okay? Because this is clearly a RICO. If you don't know what RICO is, it's when you get together. Actually, let's switch gears. Let's switch gears because now I'm forgetting what RICO is. Let's go into what RICO is because this is RICO. RICO stands for the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations. This is clearly a corrupt organization that they set out to put this kid, young adult, in prison. And everybody, including the judge, is acting on what they did. I have never in my life heard of a transcript. Now, we're in the month of July, almost 30 days out, and the transcript have not been done. Not only has it not been done, the judge is keeping it from being done. The judge is intentionally making sure that the transcripts are not done because he does not want Carmelo to be able to appeal this case. So many things were done here that, I mean, it's disgusting. All right, so Carmelo's attorneys go on to say that the court reporter's record could not fill the gap when counsel. So, okay, let me rephrase this. Although we don't have the court reporter's record because it's not done, that is not the complete issue here. There were so many things, but they go on to say that when Carmelo's attorney contacted the official court reporter, they were advised that no portion of the trial had been transcribed. Again, nothing available. Carmelo is under a strict guideline. Tell me why nothing is available when Carmelo's attorneys usually, and in most cases, would have to depend on the court to provide the transcripts. But in this thing, you know, here they are intentionally not completing the transcript because if they don't complete it, they just say it's not done, you know. So they're doing any and everything to see him not get this trial, this new hearing and this appeal done. So basically what Carmelo's attorneys go on to say is they reached out to the official court reporter. They were advised that no portion of this trial had been transcribed. Therefore, Carmelo's attorneys was left to prepare a motion with neither the pleadings and the case file because it's in the court's chambers, the judge's chambers, and it's not a transcript available. Guys, that's extremely hard to do because the proceeding relies heavily and solely on the transcript. So this was done intentionally. Carmelo's attorneys go on to say, if you were to look at this case, if you were to go online and look at this case, you see nothing. Okay? It reflects no motions that were filed. Anybody reading this case, because I read it, you wouldn't really know what happened in the case because there's nothing there. So ultimately what they're saying is they did this all in secret for no reason, and this should have been public. There should have been documents filed to, you know, say what actually happened, but none of this happened in this particular case. It says the court's unlawful sealing of this record compressed the defendant's effective time and deprived him of a complete and accurate record to which he was entitled. Okay, based on this and everything I said in my previous video, and in the previous video, guys, What they solely focused on is the judge intentionally not opening the court to the public. And pretty much what they stated is the judge didn't open, the court up. They didn't say it, but they alluded to it. It's because the purpose here was to do everything in secret and away from the public, because it seemed like they had already figured out that they were going to make sure that Carmelo was convicted. Now, they don't say this in the new trial motion that they filed, but essentially they prove really that he intentionally kept everybody out. He said that they went on and they planned everything, but one thing they didn't plan is how they were going to allow the public to be able to, see everything that was going on. Now, one could say, and I believe this Judge Roach stated that, he just didn't have enough seats. But they proved in this motion, it's not about having enough seats. You could have provided audio. You could have provided, you could have had the cameras to come in. There's a lot of things that the judge could have did that he didn't, because this was the attention the whole time. So basically, the defendant's entitlement to a new trial rests on Carmelo's Sixth Amendment to a public trial. The court's off-record sealing confirms that public access was restricted in both the courtroom and the case file. Obviously, nobody can get the case file. Nobody can get the transcripts. And that restriction was structural rather than incidental. So structural means that it was done on purpose. It wasn't an accident. We know that we are all humans and we make mistakes, but they did this intentionally. So they say these restrictions were structural rather than incidental, and by impairing the defendant's ability to prepare this motion on a complete record. So everything they did and that they're continuing to do, it hindered Carmelo's, even his ability and his legal team's ability to prepare this motion, because they are not giving up the transcripts. It's not done, and the judge is holding it in his chambers. The judge needs to be arrested, guys. This is RICO. They say that this is unfair and it reinforces the need for relief. Let Carmelo out of jail, give him a new trial. This is unconstitutional. It violates his Sixth Amendment. So finally, they say the physical closure did not operate alone. So basically, all of these things work together. From July 28, 2025, this was around the time that this incident happened, through the verdict, every person was with firsthand knowledge of this case. The parties, their attorneys, the witnesses, any experts, consultant agents, spokespersons, law enforcement, court staff, they all were forbidden by contempt if they made any statement that would address the character, the credibility, or any testimony, whether, they're making statements about, is this person guilty? Is this person innocent? Anybody, any statement. If they made any statement, y'all. So if they said the Metcalfs, they have this terrible history of putting their hands on people, they couldn't say it. So ultimately, in closing, guys, what Carmelo's defense is saying that everything that this court did as it relates to this case was a direct attempt to restrict access, to keep the public out, because essentially they did not want the public to be a part of this case, because we know what they were intending to do. Now, I believe for the next set, I'm going to go live. So I'll catch you guys later. Like I said, I'm on page 50. I think when I jump back on for the next time, I'm going to do 50 pages. Well, no, I'm going to do 25 because I want to keep these to 30 minutes because I know people are doing the lives where they are reading the entire document. And I didn't want to do that because, hey, if you can, if you wanted me to, the document's read, then you could probably go to those other people's channels. I'm just giving you guys a high level overview. Okay. So I'll be back later. Make sure you guys are liking the video. Okay, hit that thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, like the video. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Also, there are several ways to donate. One of the ways to donate to the channel, in my preference,
Coffee. Follow me.